All right. Good morning, everyone. Hey, some folks jumped in here earlier. I appreciate that. Let me know who's here. As always, these are more fun when they are interactive. Let me see if my speaker is on. Nope, my speaker is not on. Let me turn my speaker on, and let me make sure that I am using the Realtek microphone as opposed to the Yeti microphone because there's the Yeti. That happens every time I plug in this microphone right here because I think this is a Yeti microphone. All right, let's see who my first commenter is. Chaos Rain. Chaos Rain. I think it was actually raining here in the DMV. That's why I'm going with the Scully this morning because it's kind of chilly here still, even though we've crossed into, I think we've technically crossed into spring. And we just went through daylight savings last Sunday. All right. I set this originally for 10 p.m. and then 10 a.m. and then 10:30, and I'm just going to go ahead and get this going now so I can wrap up. I'm going to show a video in this stream, and then I'm going to read something. I know that's not always entertaining for you guys. When I read, I'll get as far through it as I can. If I get tired, I'll just stop. But this morning's stream is entitled Artificial Womb Technology, the Wave of the Future. How far away are we? Okay, so this has been in the back of my mind for a while. If you are a follower of the master teacher BGS Ibmore in the Black Manosphere, you've heard about this, but I've been thinking about this, and other larger thought-based channels are talking about this now. So even though the mainstream media and the political class, even though they're not talking about it, those who are in the know, the non-pedestrians, they're talking about it. So I was thinking about what I was going to present yesterday, and you guys almost got farming and tariffs, but then I remembered Zuby. He hosted someone and they were talking about it. I watched it and I said, okay, let's do artificial womb technology tomorrow. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, let me share this using my Android here on my original channel, and then we'll jump in. By the way, I tried mirroring. I want to watch something that's not on YouTube, and I tried mirroring this phone to my Fire TV in my bedroom, and I couldn't do it because I think this is a Samsung phone. No, this is an Android, and my Fire TV is a Toshiba, so I couldn't get them to pair up. All right. What's going on, Walaya 3R? Thank you for being here. Everybody, please smash that like button on the way in, no matter how long you stay. Some people hop in and hop out, but please smash that like button. That would help me out a great deal. Okay. And let me know if you have any thoughts or others on this topic. All right. That's been shared over there. And so guys, so those of you watching, I'm gonna probably do an informal poll throughout this stream because, as I just described, there are pedestrians and there are non-pedestrians. Shout out to the master teacher, and the pedestrians are not in the know. Okay, so just seeing this title is going to shock quite a few people. So maybe for you all here, it won't. But should I share this over in Facebook, and should I share this with my family? Let me know what you guys think as I go through this. I'm gonna ask that question throughout, because over on Facebook, people are flashing stories, poking their butts out, showing all kinds of things, and there are all kinds of self-indulgences. But something like this will really shake a lot of people. So let me know what you think. Should I? And this will shake my family too, because they don't know. They're kind of in the pedestrian realm as well. So let me know. Should I share this on Facebook, and should I share this with my family? Anyway, I'll see you on the other side of the intro, and we're going to talk about artificial womb technology.
So Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well, Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some T-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields. Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us, all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell. There are always science and technology stories to tell. Okay, so this morning I'm going to talk about artificial womb technology. This is, it makes you wonder, is this art? Is this life imitating art, or is this art imitating life, or is this just a necessity based upon where things are going? Wilaya 3R says, I don't know. It can be crazy either way. Most people aren't really trained to understand these issues. I agree with that. So there's a thing called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, and that's when a person essentially starts crashing out when they hear things that conflict with their worldview and what they thought to be true and what they knew to be true and accepted to be true. So if you, for example, this is just an example, but if someone's entire worldview is built upon Jesus being Lord and Jesus coming back and a second time, and you argue against that, you're gonna, if someone's life is built upon that belief, you could potentially shake them, and you're going to end up in a very, very vicious argument. You may potentially, but Wilaya 3R, I agree with that. People are not trained to understand and comprehend these issues and think about these issues and look around them and say, okay, well, is this really happening? Is this really going on? Oh, I didn't know that was going on. And you know what? Yeah, there are some things, there are some alarming things that are going on. And if we don't fix these, the consequences could be pretty dire. Okay. So on Monday, I'm going to use this as a segue. If you're in the Black manosphere, you've heard this talk before. If you're not, the nameless protagonist is here. the master of the mouse utopia, transhumanism, and a litany of other things. But on my main channel, Os, nameless protagonist. Okay. On Monday, I've got Aaron Clary on my main channel. I like to interview authors over there. When I get my shekels together, I'm going to buy Dr. Ronald Neal's book and read that and hopefully host him. But Aaron wrote this book called A World Without Men, an analysis of an all-female economy. Okay. This will probably get me in hot water by some people interviewing Aaron on this book. But the book, it's essentially talking about, it's talking about culturally and socially how the genders have been indoctrinated to separate, okay, as opposed to work together. Well, you can make the argument that one gender has been indoctrinated to separate from the other, reject the traditional role that it's had, and now the other gender is just kind of backing away and just falling out of society altogether. So when you have that, things will break down. Society will break down. And so he spends a lot of time in this book talking about the economic contributions of men to our gross domestic product and who contributes how much to the economy and what will happen if the men's functions go away. But he also argues in here that, I'm sure some of you guys are seeing this, and you may be seeing this out in the real world, because people argue, well, you're just spending too much time online. That's online stuff. But if you listen and you look around, a lot of men are falling back from the pursuit of, I'll just say, romantic relationships. And they're not maximizing themselves, and they're falling out of the workforce. That's covered in this book here, Men Without Work by Nicholas Eberstadt. So there are, according to this, there's a huge population of young men who are not doing anything. They're playing video games. They're becoming monks. They're not contributing to the GDP, though they are consuming the social benefits. Okay, so all of this is going to lead to a crash or a cataclysm of some sort. But the other thing it's going to impact is birth rates. Okay, Nameless has done a lot of work. Nameless, I'll have to, let me slow down. I'll have to invite you, since you are the SME on the Mouse Utopia. You talked about that a couple of years ago. I'll have to host you at some point just to focus and talk about that. But the end result of young men and men in general falling out of the workforce and feeling alienated from society, and being demonized in numerous ways, is that you're going to have a negative birth rate. Okay, you could argue the technology. I think that's part of the Mouse Utopia argument or thesis, is that once things get too comfortable, genders don't need each other anymore. So then the end result of all of this is that you're going to see a collapse in birth rates. Okay, so that's where this is coming from. So very, very quickly, the equalizer is here. I'm going to read some comments before I jump in. Let's see. Williah 3R says, people at the academic level, people in the military, federal government agencies like the CIA, the NSA, the DOD, the HIH. I'm not familiar with the HIH. CDC and politicians who have top secret clearances are more trained on sensitive topics. Yep, I think our political class, they know all of this is going on, but they don't share everything. Okay. Okay. Nameless says to the chat, an instructor on the panel. So I don't know that I'm an instructor. I'm just a content creator. I know some things. He says, because these folks I mentioned are forced to deal with these issues and their consequences as part of their chosen occupations. Nameless says, there has certainly since the 20th century to take a socialist perspective of looking at economic class, race, and gender as things to govern and balance by redistribution as an unintended, I think, consequence. Yep, consequence. At times, people, men especially, withdraw or rebel. Okay. The Sal is here. He says, good morning. Nameless says, it would be an honor. I have quite a bit of recent information on that as well, corroborating with many things we spoke about, including Dr. Nicole Ali. Okay. So I'll host you at some point when our schedules align to talk about that and to revisit that. I did pull down a PDF on it. This is why you have to collaborate and why you have SMEs on different things, because the time is finite. So I just haven't had a chance to read about it. But leading up to our talk, I will bring myself up to speed on it. And he says the key is specific environments that social species find themselves in, and behavioral sync. Dr. John Calhoun described it in his amalgamated work, Death Squared. Okay, so artificial womb technology. I have an article here from Nature, which I'm going to skim over probably. It's a lengthy piece. I don't know if I have the patience to read it, and you guys might not have the patience to sit here and listen to me read. But a number of the pieces are framing it or centering it. Shout out to Dr. Tia-San Johnson. They're centering it on a method to facilitate the births of preemies. Okay, so you're seeing that spin. So babies who are prematurely born, artificial womb technology can be used to assist those births. Okay, but in other circles, the argument is being made that this is the future. Okay, with the way things are going in society, and this is the way things are going between the genders. Okay, this is something that humanity is going to need to keep going. And you know what, Nameless, as I was thinking about this and reading up on it, this probably makes it easier to implement this transhumanism thing. If you're growing humans like this is it will probably be easier to cause that merge of man and machine. Okay, before we get into the video by Zuby and Gurwinder Bogle, just we've seen images of this in pop culture before. Okay, for my sci-fi heads out there, one place where we saw this. Oh, geez, it didn't load my pictures up. Hold on. StreamYard. And sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes these Hollywood writers and producers, they seem to have their eyes on where things are going, even before the general public does. So George Lucas in Star Wars, in the prequel trilogy, George Lucas gave an iteration of this in Attack of the Clones. In Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, you know, the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, he orchestrated this plan to create this clone army to take over the Republic and kill all the Jedi. He succeeded for the most part, but we saw clones, we saw cloning, we saw humanoid species being generated in vitro, experimentally, asexually. Okay, and then the other franchise that touched upon this was The Matrix. Okay, in The Matrix, the machines realized that they had to use humans as an energy source, and so the machines figured out how to grow humans to take advantage of the BTUs that humans naturally generate. Does anybody know out there what a Does anybody out there know what a BTU is before we move on to the video? My scientists out there, BTUs. Does anybody know what a BTU is? Lawrence Fishburne says it in the movie as he's breaking it down to Keanu Reeves' character. Morpheus is talking to Neo, and he gives him the whole technological, historical spiel, and he mentions BTUs. Does anybody know what a BTU is? Tony. Got some smart guys. You guys are some real non-pedestrians over here. Yep, it's a British thermal unit, and a British thermal unit. It's a metric for heat energy. So energy. So in that movie, The Matrix, the Matrix was using humans as a form of energy to run the entire system. Okay. See, all the smart guys are rolling in. Will I doesn't know what it was, but of course, Aquateki knows what it is. Good morning, Aquateki. Okay. So this is significant also going back, just two visuals here, because we were a sexual species. So in a sexual species, your males typically contribute the sperm to the reproduction, and your females contribute the eggs to the reproduction. Okay. And the sum of the two gives rise to new beings. Okay. But again, what happens when your two genders are disagreeing and not coming together for whatever reason? Your species runs the risk of going away. So, Zuby, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zuby. He is of Nigerian descent. He does a long form podcast like Chris Williamson and Tom Bilyeu, and I guess you could throw Rogan in there and Valuetainment. And you see on these podcasts, you see writers making the circuit. You see bloggers and writers, oftentimes some of the same bloggers and writers, great thinkers, and many of them have blogs on Substack. Are you guys familiar with Substack? That's where a lot of people are now blogging. I was encouraged to go over to Substack myself. I just haven't had time to go over and start a Substack account because I've been busy with a bunch of different things. But so this is a video of Zuby talking with Gurwinder Bogle. And this one is entitled "The Birth Rate Crisis and Artificial Wombs." So as I described a couple of minutes ago, some people are talking about this in terms of this will be a good way to help complete premature births, but others are of the opinion that this is the wave of the future, especially with what's going on now in society between the genders. Okay, and what's happening between the genders, that's a whole separate discussion. You guys know a lot about that. Yeah, I'll just leave that there. So let me cue this video up and we'll watch it. And then I have a piece from Nature talking about the actual science behind this technique and where it is right now. So this is Zuby and Gurwinder Bogle. Fair use. I will stop this periodically. I think that's what you're supposed to do to make it unique content. So fair use. And I believe in addition to being a podcaster, Zuby is a musician. He makes hip hop. He's of Nigerian descent, I believe. Okay, here we go. Fair use.
I think already, we're doing that thing of perhaps over intellectualizing the issue. Possibly. I think that the thing is this is one of those issues that would actually be very easy to solve, but it does not fit within the liberal worldview to do what would actually to do what would actually work. To do what would actually work does not fit within the modern liberalized worldview. I mean, if you actually wanted to solve it, you would ban birth control and you would certainly ban abortion. And you would perhaps also do stuff to fix people's hormones because, testosterone is plummeting and women's hormones are getting scrambled. But, I mean, that would actually fix it. So I'm not even saying I'm all for banning abortion, by the way. I'm not even advocating banning birth control. But my point is that would actually, if people were like dead serious about wanting to fix the issue, then that would fix it. But that concept will make many people, liberals for sure, but even many conservatives, it would make them sort of like reel and be like, oh, no, we can't do that. We need to try to tweak all these other knobs. But tweaking all those other knobs, honestly, is not going to do much. Like, it's really not going to do much.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think something like that would work. I mean, like, how would you even go about banning?
No, it would work. It would work.
But how could you be
sure?
But
there's not the political will to do it. Of course.
So right here, they're talking about Zuby made the proposal that if you ban birth control and abortion, then birth rates would rebound And Gerwinder is suggesting, no, there'll be a black market. There's no way you could ban it. People will still find a way to get these things done if they want to.
It would work. How would it not? People aren't going to stop.
The first thing is how would you actually even ban?
People are okay.
How would you ban birth control? I mean, you know, like, I don't know how that would work. Like, how would you do it? Like, because I think if you try to ban something in today's liberal world, it just wouldn't work, because people would be able to source birth control from pretty much anywhere. I mean, you know, you can, at the absolute worst, you could use the skin of a sausage and put that over your dick and use that as birth control. Do you know what I mean? It's like what I'm trying to say is that.
Look, if we go back prior to the 1960s, prior to reliable birth control, particularly
revolution.
Yes, if we go pre-1960s, there were 0 countries in the world, as far as I'm aware, that had a major issue with birth rate.
Yeah,
from the 1960s. It's been
so right there. Zuby points out that before the 1960s, there wasn't an issue with birth rates. That was around the time of the baby boom. But if you guys go back and look at my, I did a video on Margaret Sanger and the true legacy of birth control. It was initially designed to, well, help women control births, because I think married women, even in the context of marriage, they had no mechanism to stop births. So that's partially why you had families of 8, 9, 10, 12, 11 kids, because they just had no way to stop it, you know. And then the question is, are you, this is a philosophical question, are you supposed to stop it? Okay. But then, as with most technologies, it evolved to how it's being used today. Okay, but previously it was designed to be used within the context of marriage. Okay, fair use.
Been massively plummeted. Again, I'm just saying that I know people want to have like, oh, we need to look at this and this and this and this, and I'm just like, to me, it's a bit like the crime issue. It's a bit like, okay, yeah, you can tweak this and tweak that and tweak that, and I'm not saying that has 0 impact, but if you really, really wanted to solve the issue, then you've got to do an El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it could possibly work in, I think, if a country was more, but again, there's no political will, as you pointed out, and there's no logistical way to do it. There's no pragmatic way to actually ban something like that. I mean, you wouldn't be able to get a law like that through Congress or through Parliament. And even if you did, like, it would be very, very hard to enforce a law like that, especially in a world that's globalized like ours. I just don't see it being a viable solution, even if there was a political will for it. So I think, unfortunately, we have to consider, you know, more sort of intellectual sort of solutions. And it's a bit of a scary one, because it like all of the things, because I've spoken to quite a lot of people about this, and nobody seems to have a good solution that actually would actually work, like in the real world, you know. And there's a lot of ideas in theory. I mean, you know, the idea of artificial wombs repels a lot of people. It kind of makes me feel uncomfortable.
The thing is, we don't need artificial wombs. Like,
so guys, so Gerwinder just said that the thought of artificial wombs makes him feel uncomfortable. Does the thought of artificial wombs make you guys feel uncomfortable? Is it unsettling in some way to you guys? I can hear my mother. My mother is a devout Christian. I could hear her saying something like, this is an abomination. Okay. And then, you know, you get into all kinds of questions about, where does the soul come from? Will those people born that way be able to develop naturally? Will there be something wrong with those people? But does that make you uncomfortable with the prospect of humans walking around not born in the traditional way? I mean, I'm thinking about the old Robin Harris joke, test tube baby. But I think even with a test tube baby, the zygote was still inserted back into the womb of the mother, and it was nursed there. Anyway, does that make you all uncomfortable? The thought of people being artificially born outside of a human mother's womb?
We genuinely don't. Like, the problem is, like, look, and I'm not here like moralizing, right? Like, if I had been born 50 years before I was, I'm pretty sure I would have at least 4 kids by now. I'm like 99% sure of that. Is I grew up in. I'm also impacted by culture, by society, by technology, by things that the world is telling you, by.
Hey guys, can you still see me and hear me? Can you still see me and hear me? My computer just did something. Can you guys still see me and hear me? Say yes, no, put a 1 in the chat, something. Okay, well, I'm going to bring that piece back because I saw my computer do its little thing. So Zuby basically just said that. So there's something cultural and generational that has happened since the 1950s or 60s, and Zuby just made the point that if he was born earlier, by now he probably would have had 4 children by now. So there's something culturally and societally happening that's driving all of this. Based upon Nameless's research on the mouse utopia, maybe it's the technology, maybe society has become too comfortable. But clearly, I mean, he just stated that. And he looks to be in his 30s. So Zuby is probably a millennial. Yeah, I think the millennials are in their 30s right now. Okay. Fair use, fair use.
Years before I was, I'm pretty sure I would have at least 4 kids by now. I'm like 99% sure of that. So I myself, someone who is more conservative and who is more religious, I'm also impacted by the milieu that I grew up in. I'm also impacted by culture, by society, by technology, by things that the world is telling you, by all of these sorts of things. The truth is, the average age of marriage for both men and women and the average age of having a first child has been pushed up by about a decade from a few decades ago. So if people are starting that at, let's say, 30 or even 35, as opposed to 20 or 25, then the results are sort of inevitable, right? Like, it's not rocket science. I know you're not supposed to tell women that they have a fertility window, but they do. If you start trying to have kids at 40, it's going to be a lot harder than it would have if you started at 20. We know these things, but again, I think the political correctness and not wanting to suggest this or suggest that. I also think some of the blank slateism plays into this. It sounds like a radical idea to some people, but I don't think it's radical at all. I don't necessarily think that the sort of structure of life of even men and women in general should look identical. I think it would make complete sense. And this is something that, a policy could be done. This is something where incentives could be made that would encourage women to perhaps start a family, make it easier for them to start a family prior to pursuing or completing higher education.
So right here, I think the question, the principle they're tossing around now is biology downstream of culture, or is culture downstream of biology? So right now, I think our biology is downstream of culture. So certain cultural changes, societal changes have been put in place. And one of the things Zuby just mentioned is one of the things that's been enforced is men and women are the same. Okay, men and women are, regardless of our biologies, we're the same. So we should be measured the same. Our career aspirations should be the same. Our life choices should be the same. So that's what he's talking about right now. Okay, fair use, fair use. And I think someone else postulated that politics is downstream of culture as well. So right now, yeah, if you change the culture and you change the environment, you're going to impact the biology, but you're also going to impact the politics as well. So all these things are interrelated.
Again, knowing that, hey, if you're a man, you know what, you could wait until you're 40, and then you could be like, oh, you know what, I want to start a family now. If you're a woman, it's much, much harder to do that. And we're telling this lie under the name of egalitarianism and blank slateism that, oh no, it's totally fine, right? Men and women can and should pursue the exact same timeline. And as a result, there are millions, the vast majority of people who end up permanently childless, vast majority of them did not want that and did not plan for that.
So here I'm going to pull in Stephen P. Shaw and his documentary Birth Gap. There's a documentary called Birth Gap by Stephen P. Shaw. And I haven't watched the documentary in its entirety. I've watched videos on him about the documentary, and he said the same thing, that the people who are childless right now, they didn't intend to be, but when you're taught certain things at home and in school, your life ends up unfolding in certain ways. So they didn't intend for this to happen, but it matters what you teach and what parts of your culture and society you pass on and you don't pass on.
Right? A lot of people think that this is happening just because people are voluntarily choosing not to have kids, and that's not the case. The vast majority of people, over 80% of the people who end up permanently, at 50 years old without any kids, they did want to have children. And I think this is sad, by the way. But for all of these reasons, I mean, there's that. Of course, there's infertility as well. I mean, that's now affecting about 1 in 3 couples. And there's many different reasons for that. One of them is age, hormonal disruption, sperm quality. There's a lot of factors going in. I don't know like absolutely everything, but there are a few sort of very obvious ones that I think people want to skirt around. And while the concept of an artificial womb it's certainly interesting technologically, sort of freaks me out, but it's interesting, but it's kind of like, well, what's the problem that we're solving here? It's not like women's wombs have sort of generally stopped working.
Yeah, I think with artificial wombs, I think one of the sort of proposed benefits of those would be that they would allow women to pursue careers whilst also gestating a child, because if you gestate a child in an artificial womb, then obviously you don't need to take time out from your career or whatever. And so women who are high flyers or who are really career oriented, they could still have a child, they don't have to take 9 months out or whatever to do that. Whether it will work in practice, I don't know, but this is one of the ideas that's proposed.
So it's focus on career. It's setting the woman free from those 9 months of incubating the child, the fetus. Okay. And what did I'm not trying to drag Michelle Obama through the mud, but what was something that Michelle argued passionately during that Democratic convention in her speech? She pulled in the whole piece about women are more than baby incubators. Women are more than baby incubators. Women are more than baby incubators. Okay. So, okay. I mean, arguably, that's the most important job for our species. But that sentiment is prevalent now. And Michelle Obama wasn't the only one to voice that. I saw some over the last 5 years. I saw numerous rantings on social media communicating that sentiment as well. We're not just baby incubators. Okay. So that's a cultural thing that's happening, or that's happened. That's giving rise to the need for this discussion. Fair use, fair use. You guys keep letting me know what you think there in the chat.
Also, there's the idea that, you know, I actually think artificial wombs are going to be a thing regardless of what people think of them, and that even if they're not used by civilians, they will probably be used by the military at some point, because I think that maybe, you know, when it gets viable to actually create your own human, I think the military are probably going to do this sort of, you know, probably not out in the open, but why would you not? Like, if you want to dominate the world, why would you not create superhumans? You know, so there's just literally no, like, if you're someone like China, or you're the sort of DARPA, you know, and you're just interested in taking over the world, which they are, they want to have maximum power. It just makes no sense to not create superhumans like that you can use whatever.
I have a
So now we're kind of crossing into the eugenics and the military industrial complex. So yeah, you know, I don't want to speculate, but are they already experimenting with this? And is this a part of the military strategy for the developed countries now? Okay. Will it be used for that going forward? Wars and geopolitics. Okay, I'll go a little bit further. Fair use.
a thought on that. Wouldn't it make more sense to use, I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to use robotics or drones? Why would you want to create humans?
You can do both, you know, because obviously there's going to be some things that machines can't do, which is like have true free will, like agency, you know. And there are obviously now, like, I mean, everybody's focused on AI, you know, everybody's talking about robotics and machines, but there's actually been some massive developments in the world of CRISPR, gene editing, and also there has been a lot of development in sort of the creation of artificial wombs, mainly with animals. But as soon as it becomes viable to create a superior human, superior in quotes, I just don't see how people would not do that. There's going to be some people out there who will want to do it for whatever reason. If you could create, you know, scientists with super IQs, you know, or even if you just wanted to create like somebody like a wife, you know, you create your own wife. In the I'm not talking in the near future, I'm talking in the far future. Do you know what I mean? But think about when it's easy, when it's eventually going to become miniaturized. Everything, one sort of miniaturized over time. They become smaller, they become easier to do at home. And I would say maybe in 100 years, so it might be a long time away, but in 100 years, it will be possible to create your own human in your house without using biology, without having sex.
You'll be able to create your own human in your own house without biology, without having sex. Fair use.
So you could actually, on a computer, on a machine, you could probably create your own human. And I think about that, I think, where would that lead? When you can actually create your own human with the qualities that you want them to have, you could actually set the genes, the polygenic sort of structure of their body. You could create that yourself. What would you do with that? That's a very scary thought, but that's going to happen, I think, because again, you know, miniaturization is an iron law of technology. Things become easier over time, they become smaller over time. Eventually, artificial wombs will become small enough that somebody could do them in their basement. And that might be the only solution that we have. I pray it's not, but that might be the only solution we have eventually to procreation. Because, you know, there's these beautiful ideas out there, but I don't know if any of them will work. There was one idea that I thought of, which would be that I think one of the reasons why people are not having children is that men are just not finding the incentives to not be as good.
Okay, so right there. So Gerwinder said one of the reasons people are not having children is men are not finding the incentives to be as good. So one theory, and this comes out in Aaron's book. We're gonna talk about this Monday on my main channel. and they've danced around it in other discussions, like in this book, Men Without Work. There's still an attempt to be politically correct and to not talk about why so many young men are falling out of the workforce or who are disinterested in contributing to the GDP, contributing to the country, achieving, being better. But one hypothesis is that a man's main motivation for doing that is for to have a family. And so if you take that away, those men are not going to maximize themselves or their potential. Okay, so you make this societal change, you change this one thing, and then there's this Pandora's box that opens up. And Aaron makes the argument in this book that these men, these unworking men, these unproductive men, they're fine producing or living off of about $22,000. Okay, if they can play video games, hang out online, hang out in their basement, quote unquote, that's okay. But if those other incentives aren't there, if that impetus to have a family and provide for that family is not there, then their overall productivity is going to go away. So culture, society, biology, all these things are kind of converging right now. TIQS says, new viewer, the nameless protagonist brought me here. Thank you, nameless, for getting me a new viewer. Please consider subscribing if you are not subscribed. I will play a little bit more of this. I'm already at 47 minutes. Yeah, and I there is so much science and technology news and content to create. I hop around at times, but this was the time to do this.
To actually settle down and start a family, because they're thinking of the short term rather than the long term.
Yeah, you're correct.
And
yeah, you're correct.
And I think if you could make the incentives better. I mean, one reason why I think the incentives are considered bad is that men consider it a lot of work, and there's a lot of pain in being rejected by a woman. So if you actually go up to a woman, and actually ask her out, that there's a cost, there's a potential cost there of being rejected. And there's also, even if you're not rejected, then there's a lot of work you have to put in. And I think that making things easy goes a long way. That's being underestimated. So maybe one of the things that's happening is that a lot of men are now finding AI girlfriends. And this has kind of led me, there are AI girlfriends are becoming big business now.
Okay, so there's another offshoot of this. AI girlfriends. That's something I will probably cover at some point. AI girlfriends, I think we're all hearing stories of men getting sex dolls. Okay, so this brave new world is creating solutions or alternatives for natural, real women. So what happens if your men and your boys decide that that's a better way to go? No rejection, no arguments, no drama. That this seems to be something that's happening too. But even I'm hearing that some of the women are getting AI best friends. When they go home, their Alexa, whatever it is, like a Jarvis from Iron Man. Okay, those are becoming more prevalent. So no negotiating, no drama, no arguments, no having to compromise with anybody. Something that knows you really, really well. Fair use.
And one of the things I was thinking is maybe we could use these AI girlfriends to actually train men to go out there and meet real girlfriends, you know, instead of being a substitute.
This is so dystopian.
Yeah. Instead of being a substitute, like maybe you could use these AI girlfriends to actually incentivize people to go out there and meet a real girlfriend by making them feel like they're improving their confidence, basically. You know, maybe that could work. But again, like, you know,
we need to fix testosterone levels, man. Like the testosterone levels are, they've dropped so hard that this is even becoming a conversation.
Yeah, that's also an issue. But ultimately, one of the things that I do fear is whatever's easiest tends to take over. That tends to become the norm. Convenience culture is, I suppose, what we call it. And so I'm trying to work out like the things that are what's going to become more convenient in the future, because usually that's a good way to predict the future. And this is why I'm worried about artificial wombs, because eventually it's going to become more convenient. I'm not talking about in the next decade or even in the next 50 years. I'm talking pretty far in the future. So next 100 years, right? This is my estimate. In the next 100 years, it will be easier to just print your own human.
Nameless, I'm going to read your comment. He says, and to those watching, this is not to engage in misogyny. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. We're not engaging in misogyny here. He says women are absolutely not comfortable with this idea, thinking that men will just stop trying, which is quite admittance that potential for family drives men to participate in society. The gaslight is required to keep things going. Yeah, and I'm seeing content and hearing stories about all of these speed dating events and these mixers where no men are showing up. Okay, so if that's true, yeah, and if men are generally checking out, yeah, that's something.
Than it would be to actually raise a human in the natural way. And so what is that going to lead to? Like, because it's hard work to raise a child naturally, not only for the woman, like during pregnancy, but everything that comes after. You know, for like 18 years, you have to raise this child. You have to dedicate your entire life to this child for 18 years. And even after that, you have to, take care of them. And it's like, when you can do all of that in a few weeks, maybe in a month, you could grow a human in a week or a month.
But then it loses all of its value, meaning, and purpose.
Then it loses all of its value, meaning, and purpose. So one of the things, as they were saying that, one of the things that Nicholas Eberstadt said in one of his talks was that today, children are seen as burdens. They're burdens. Okay, they cost money, they cost time, they cost energy. You could be traveling and seeing the world and living your best life and doing what you want to do. So today, is that sacrifice? Is that seen in the same way that it was 60 years ago? Okay. That's something I thought about, because he's Nicholas Eberstadt has many talks on YouTube, but he did say that, yeah, that's one thing that he said, children are a delight. They're great. They're good to have, but they are a burden. Many see them as burdens and inconvenient. Salchi, I wasn't trying to be funny. I'm being serious. I'm being serious. All right. This is almost done. I might ride this out to the end. It only has a few minutes left. I hope you guys are enjoying this and getting something out of it.
That's a scary thought. And it's one that I think about a lot, because that's obviously most people aren't thinking about this, because this is very, very far in the future. We're not going to be able to do this for a long time, but it's going to happen, I think, eventually. And it's something we're going to have to think about at some point where.
Do you know what I think? Oh, sorry. Carry on. I don't
Sorry,
mean to interrupt.
No, sorry. I was pretty much done anyway.
Probably the most common question that I'm asked as a professor at Hillsdale is, what happened to my country? You know, when they
I was going to say that I don't know what the mechanism is going to be, but I'm going to make a prediction about this prediction. And my prediction is that through some mechanism or some combination of unknown unknowns or ignored knowns, that this is going to massively implode. And it's going to be a catastrophe. it's going. I believe it's some like maybe this is the Christian in me, but I think that there's a level of man playing God where once it goes past a certain point of pursuing this so-called utopia, it always collapses and results in an undesirable utopia. I think once you're at the part of instead of people having sex and reproducing, you're making human beings in bags and people's girlfriends are AI and you're like doing, I just think that at that point or before you get to that point, something goes so horribly wrong in the experiment that I'm not going to say like it wipes out humanity, probably not that extreme, but it causes some sort of massive reversion where it's like, okay, we need to go back to the old school way of doing things. That would be my predictions. I don't know what that mechanism will be. But
so we need to go back to the old school ways of doing things. We need to go back to the old school ways of doing things. Guys, what is something that Madam Vice President Harris kept pushing and pushing and pushing during her acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention? Zuby just said we need to go back to the old ways of doing things. What is something she kept emphasizing over and over and over again in her acceptance speech? Does anybody remember? Four words. She kept saying. And Trent's, I got that same thought when he was talking. Okay, Will I 3R says I never listened to Harris. Okay, 4 words. It's 4 words. We are not going back. 5 words. Okay. We are not going back. Okay. Chaos Reign. This is Zuby. His name is Zuby. Just look up Zuby on YouTube. I mean, he has a podcast. He has on bloggers and other SMEs talking about a myriad of topics. Okay. So if you want to subscribe to him, his link is in the description box. Yeah, please go over and give him a sub. Okay. You guys said I can't stand listening to her. But yeah, during her acceptance speech, yeah, she kept saying, we're not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. Okay. And Zuby right there just asked the question, are we headed towards some sort of Tower of Babel where things are going to collapse on themselves and just take us back anyway? Okay. I want to thank International Quiet Storm for the generous Cash App. That is much appreciated. I don't like to read out the amounts. I think that's personal. So I don't like to read out the amounts. But thank you for that generous Cash App. If anybody wants to Cash App me, my Cash App and PayPal are below. I run this ticker to advertise for my book, but I'll do that when I get done. Okay. Almost an hour. Yeah. Plone Dar 08. Those are the words. We are not going back. Back to what? And what was so bad about where we were? That's how we got here. I don't know. But will things eventually collapse on themselves and go back to where they were somehow? Or will all of this just go away. And there is my neighbor downstairs, the pianist, playing.
But I think
Yeah.
that would happen.
Well, I agree with you, and it's funny because I'm not a Christian, but I agree with you 100%. And it's because I'm actually looking at evolution rather than Christianity. And for me, because I try to look at things from an evolutionary perspective, and the way I see things is that we're creating for ourselves a world we didn't evolve for. In other words, a world we're not adapted to. And what's happening is that the pace of technological evolution is outpacing biological evolution. So we're creating all of these changes to our society and to our environment faster than we can adapt to it. And this is accelerating over time because, as we said, earlier, technological growth is exponential. Evolution occurs on a much longer timescale. Like biological evolution occurs on a much longer timescale than technological development. And so the gap between the world that we're creating and the world that we evolve for is expanding. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is, again, a reason why I agree with you. I think that this is going to lead, I hope it doesn't, but I think it's going to lead to some kind of reckoning.
I think this is going to lead to some kind of reckoning. Nameless, I think I've heard you say that before, that the technology is going so fast that it's outpacing our biology. I think I've heard you, I have to give you credit. I think you've stated that before numerous times. Okay, there's 1 more minute on this, guys. Fair use, fair use. So are we headed towards some sort of reckoning? And what would that be?
Where we're going to have to, something bad is going to happen, and we're going to have to work out how to get ourselves out of this hole.
This episode is brought to you by Sambrosa, the best way to get your 8 hours of rest.
Okay, so there's, you can always tell the big, that's the end of the video, guys. You can always tell the big podcasters because they've been contacted for endorsements. So Sambrosa, you know what? Out of respect for him, I didn't just play his video. Well, I'll do his advertisement. Out of respect for Zuby. This will be a few minutes, guys. Fair use, fair use.
If, like me, you sometimes struggle with nighttime restlessness and allergies, then Sambrosa Night Syrup could be a game changer for you. Sambrosa contains a natural base of 7 organic herbs, honey, and a small amount of antihistamine. It's effective and soothing with no harsh chemicals, no high fructose corn syrup, and no artificial flavors or dyes. I've been using Sambrosa for several months now, and I can personally vouch for its effectiveness when it comes to improving my quality of rest at night. I also love the fact that they're a family-owned company who share my values of faith, freedom, and integrity. My listeners can try Sambrosa today and get 10% off by going to sambrosa.com/Zuby10. That's SAMBROSA.com/Zuby10 for 10% off your order. Try Sambrosa today and wake up ready to embrace life's opportunities. Go to sambrosa.com/Zuby10 and try it out.
Try Sambrosa, everybody. Try Sambrosa. All right. That link is in the description box. Hopefully YouTube doesn't wipe this, but I mean, this is what people are doing now on YouTube. They're playing other people's content and giving analysis. So hopefully this stays up. But you guys have seen it live, so somebody will see it. Hey, a quick poll. I asked before all you guys got here, should I share this on Facebook? Should I share this with my family? I don't think people might not be able to handle this. Should I share this with the pedestrian class? By the way, this t-shirt, I just interviewed Curtis Schoon on my main channel for Black History Month. He has his own platform. It's called Schoon TV, and his quote is, "The truth may be an offense, but it is never a sin." The truth may be an offense, but it is never a sin. Shout out to Curtis Schoon. Nameless Protagonist says, do it. All right. People need to get exposed to this to begin to prepare for the cognitive intrusion that is going to make when it becomes routine and inevitable. Aquateki says, give him a taste, Doc. The Facebookers, man, they're so sensitive, and they crash out, and they get emotional, and they unfriend you. And AB Media knows. He posts his memes, and he says, "Yeah, I said it." And my family, maybe I'll share it with them. But people, if it's not in their zeitgeist, if the View and if MSNBC, if they're not talking about it, people they crash out. That's today's term, crashing out. Oh, Walaya 3R says, if you put it on TikTok, you'll get a global following. I have to learn how to. I know how to use TikTok from my phone, but I have to learn how to start playing with it from here on my desktop. Okay, an hour and 6 minutes. AB Media, of course you're gonna say, yeah, post it. You like the smoke. All right. I'm going to read a little bit of this. I may stop partway through because I'm at an hour, but I think this is part of the story as well. I appreciate you guys being here. Keep letting me know what you think. Please smash that like button. If you haven't, if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and also consider sharing this. Okay, so this is from Nature. Nature is considered a top tier science publication. Well, at least it was. But I found this yesterday. You can Google this. It says human trials of artificial wombs could start soon. Here's what you need to know. It says U.S. regulators will consider clinical trials of a system that mimics the womb, which could reduce deaths and disability for babies born extremely preterm. So that's an issue with childbirth, children being preemies. But again, this could lead to what Zuby and Gerwinder were just talking about. Okay, once this gets approved, it just takes for something to get approved once, and then all the other applications take off running. Okay. So this is written by Max Kozlov. There's a picture there of a baby, a preemie's hand out of a chamber there. Uh-oh. Oh, guys, I don't think I can read this. It's behind a paywall. On my phone, I could read it yesterday. All right, let me see. I think I have one more on standby here, which is not as long. Let me see if I can find it. All right. Let's see if MIT will allow access to their publication and their article. Okay. Okay, a lot of pop-ups here. Okay, the cookies. Okay, this is not behind a paywall, but it doesn't have those sexy images of the goat in the apparatus. Okay, so we'll power through this one, then I'll wrap up. Okay, so MIT, for those of you who don't know, MIT is one of the premier technology institutions of higher learning in the United States. MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So AB says, Aquateki says, give him a taste. Sal says, share it if you want a headache. Will I 3R says Facebook is for dum-dums and dodo brains. TikTok is where the action is. Tony says the Facebookers will crash out. Tony says, and the Instagrammers. Yeah. Okay. Let me power through this really, really quickly. So that is a artificial womb bag / chamber. I'm not sure what that is in that jar back there. I'm seeing red. So that must be some sort of blood source or oxygen source. I don't know what that is. Okay. This is entitled Everything You Need to Know About Artificial Wombs. The subtitle says artificial wombs are nearing human trials, but the goal is to save the littlest preemies, not replace the uterus. Okay, that conflicts with what we just heard. Okay, which I'm sure someone's looking at this to use to get around this birth rate plummet thing. Okay. On September 19th, now this is back in 2023. All right. On September 19th, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration advisors met to discuss how to move research on artificial wombs from animals to humans. These medical devices are designed to give extremely premature infants a bit more time to develop in a womb-like environment before entering the outside world. They have been tested with hundreds of lambs and some piglets, but animal models can't fully predict how the technology will work for humans. The most challenging question to answer is how much unknown is acceptable, said Ann Massaro, FDA's lead neonatologist in the Office of Pediatric Therapeutics at the committee meeting. That's a question regulators will have to grapple with as this research moves out of the lab and into first in human trials. What is an artificial womb? An artificial womb is an experimental medical device intended to provide a womb-like environment for extremely premature infants. In most of the technologies, the infant would float in a clear bio bag surrounded by fluid. The idea is that the preemies could spend a few weeks continuing to develop in this device after birth, so that when they're transitioned from the device, they're more capable of surviving and having fewer complications with conventional treatment. Okay, says George Michaliska, a pediatric surgeon at the University of Michigan. Oh, go blue. Okay. I'm going to probably read 3 more paragraphs, and then I will cease and desist. See, hour 13. One of the main limiting factors for survival in extremely premature babies is lung development. Rather than breathing air, babies in an artificial womb would have their lungs filled with lab-made amniotic fluid that mimics the amniotic fluid they would have had just like they would in utero. Neonatologists would insert the tubes into the blood vessels in the umbilical cord so that the infant's blood could cycle through an artificial lung to pick up oxygen. The device closest to being ready to be tested in humans, called the extrauterine environment for newborn development, or extend, encases the baby in a container filled with lab-made amniotic fluid. It was invented by Alan Flake and Marcus Davey at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and is being developed by Vitara Biomedical. Okay, I'm going to read this last paragraph and then I'll stop. Other researchers are working on artificial wombs too, though they're a bit farther behind. Scientists in Australia and Japan are developing a system similar to Extend In Europe, the Perinatal Life Support Project is working on its own technology. And in Canada, researchers have been testing their version of an artificial womb on piglets. Researchers at the University of Michigan are working on similar technology intended to be used within preemies for whom conventional therapies aren't likely to work. Rather than floating in fluid, the infants would only have their lungs filled. It's a system that could be used in existing ICUs with relatively few modifications. So we believe that that has more clinical applicability, says Mike Chaliska, who is leading the project. Guys, I'm going to drop the link in the chat now. Again, as I said at the beginning of the stream, there are two contexts for this. This one is talking about premature babies. Okay, so how to better treat premature babies. But the other context, which was covered in the video we just watched, involves solutions for society in terms of lack of partnering. So how to create and grow humans up from scratch without sexual reproduction from a man and a woman physically, which is going to be hard if your genders are separating. Okay, Salchi. Nameless, are you still out there? I'm gonna hang out. I'll hang out for another 15 minutes. Nameless, are you still out there? Yeah, Sal, feel free to chop this up and yeah, post it as you see fit. Nameless, if you want to come up and say a few words, I'm gonna hang out for 15 more minutes and then I have to run. But you're not always here, and you have been investigating this thing over the years. So if you want to come up, the link is there. If you want to give the benediction, as Mr. Z says, or just give any thoughts on this. Aquaseki says the Equalizer wants the headache. I don't know. I mean, are the Instagrammers? Well, a lot of the Instagrammers are on Facebook, but I haven't gotten, when I've posted things that may trigger people on Instagram. I don't really get a lot of blowback there. I'm a little cautious with doing it, but the Facebookers, yeah, those Facebookers, man, they're something else. There's something else. Okay. So Nameless said he's on his way. Let's see. Yeah, I thought I would have been able to show that original piece, but I guess they set the technologies differently when you're on your cell phone versus when you're in front of your PC. Okay, Nameless is here. Nameless will give us some parting thoughts and words and things to think about. But Nameless protagonist.
To the chat, instruct on the panel. How you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Excellent. Fam, I've got no clue where to start. I think you've covered the majority of things, and a lot of the comments I made in the chat really addressed some of the bigger points that I really wanted folks to consider. In general, what we've seen, especially since the advent of the civil rights legislation of 1964, is a political introduction of gender and sex, starting with sex as it was implanted as a tool to try to sink the legislation. But then later on, as iterative legislation was stacked on top of that in the form of executive orders and other initiatives to try to double down and shift the civil rights conversation from race and color to sex and gender. And then later on, all these other things that have been classified as protective classes. What this has set the stage for is to create a inevitable framework where fourth industrial technology and transhumanist doctrine in particular is now having an opportunity to enter into a territory that traditionally was only really affected by men with regards to how technology has created the modality of cities in the way that we can now, how it shifted the culture from an agrarian-based culture where family was an economic unit of measure and a unit of work throughput to now then shift and turn into technology being able to do the work of human beings, offset that physical and energy requirement to the point where people can do more with less. That has disproportionately affected the realm of men, and men have had to adapt to these new environments, especially since socioculturally, men are burdened with the debt of safety. So in the position of having technology offset that safety for the last 100 years, the question is, what's the purpose of men? And so with this being said, we now are looking at a situation where the technology is now entering into a state where it can affect the one realm that women were in charge of and disproportionately were governors of, which is reproduction by way of the womb in particular. It was her capacity to determine those outcomes because she was the carrier. And other proximity, I'm going to say proxy modalities that orbit this idea of family and reproduction in the form of sex. So these two things are like fraternal twins. So if it isn't access to family, it's access to sex and all of these things that create a gravity that men have traditionally orbited around, which again was the, I guess, societal redistribution of sex to men to encourage them to participate in civilization. Technology is now presenting as a more realistic option. And the reality is, because of its invasive nature, its interdisciplinary nature, and its intimate connection with just general infrastructure and the way nations govern themselves, this is going to come in through the military, commercial, and I guess political spheres all at once. And the only framework that exists to really govern this, that's prepared to deal with that, is the civil rights framework, which means, and I'll give you an immediate acute example to that, with these babies and combining these things with CRISPR technology, for example, so gene editing. Is it fair for naturally born people to compete with genetically modified people who are coming from artificial wombs and to take the same SATs, to take the same placement tests, to get the same intellectual assessments? And this is not even including what you could do with implants, nanomachines, etc. You see where I'm going? The only framework that exists to answer that question is civil rights. But this is also a technology that has the capacity to make moot, redundant, or outright replace this idea of these protected classes. Because with transhumanism, you could just, with a flip of a switch, as it was said earlier, create a baby. And we may not be there yet, but we get there eventually over time, whether we want it or not, because as was mentioned in the podcast you listed earlier, if you don't find a direct means of addressing that, people will find indirect means, as we've seen with the abortion conversation. But in context of this conversation, we know that this mantra of my body, my choice has been a very serious political platform that many states have vied their political weight on. Well, what does that look like then when you've introduced artificial wombs? And then what does that look like then in family court when the burden of birth is no longer exclusively in the realm of women? These are questions that the culture has to answer. And these are ways that we're not going to have decades to figure out an answer to. This is just going to be in people's faces all of a sudden. And people are going to be surprised at how polarized they are with whatever direction they would like to go as it relates to this. I think those were some of the bigger things I just wanted to highlight without going too much into, I guess, the woods and the rabbit hole with it. But it's definitely things people need to consider because of its transformative and interruptive and disruptive nature that will command a response. And if you don't respond with agency and intention, then a choice will be made for you.
Okay, Chaos, I see you backstage. I'm wrapping up. I just wanted Nameless to come up and give some of his expert thoughts and opinions on this. So I'm wrapping up as soon as we finish talking here. So I'm not bringing a third person up right now. Okay, so Nameless, so you think that that article, I don't know if they're trying to spin this, but that article that I just read, I mean, certainly that's one application for it for preemies, but the other side is eventually, do you think that they're going to start, trying to bypass traditional sexual reproduction? Is that another route? Do you foresee
and
that?
That's where we run into, that's what I was talking about, the whole black market modality. So with things like this is where ethics commissions come in. And we already know that the political inertia is set to protect the rights and likeness. And this is the key you need to take a look at: likeness of women, which is where this is going to start overlapping into the sexual modality with this. So using artificial intelligence, things like, I don't want to digress too deep to enter into a place where your channel may get, targeted negatively for it.
Okay.
I'll just say proxies to things that lead to sex.
Yep.
This can establish precedents to classify this idea of artificial wombs for the sake of procreation as having this as being seen as an attack on female autonomy to a degree. Like, there's so many ways this can be framed negatively to discourage it, but this only flies in certain areas that are hyper blue with regard to that thinking. Because if you look at a place like China, this will absolutely be green lighted and co-signed on. You go to a place like Greece, you go to Japan, Korea, especially South Korea, this is going to be aggressively green lighted on. So if you don't get access to that there, what would stop people from going to other countries and just getting the same thing done? And then there you are. Now we're back into the question of, what is the legal status of this child if they were conceived using these modalities? Then there's the secondary question of who, because this is an artificially conscripted modality, is there a possible patent conflict that is involved with the human product or result? Like, do you see how all of this creates a serious ethics conversation that has to be addressed first before we even get there? And how many people may just bypass all of that and go to these regions where they're already green lighted and call it a day. And then they're forced to come up with a response to it because now they've got this hidden subsect of the population that was conceived this way from both genders. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. This is going to be very complex, and I'm just thinking about the spiritual community. They're probably not ready for something like this.
That is an understatement, because you're going to deal with that within your own family. Yeah, go ahead, fam.
Yeah. But the other thing is, at least our society, our country, I mean, it needs bodies. I mean, so. Unless they're looking for robotics and machines to replace manpower ultimately. But if men and women aren't coming together, then and they need bodies, then this might be the only way forward. Until you start reversing the culture and going back and saying, hey, it's okay to be a trad wife, or it's okay to put childbirth and child rearing ahead of a career.
Which I think we'll see a synthesis of. I think all these things will be happening simultaneously, because the nature of the fourth industrial revolution is that it does allow you to do more with less. So I guess for a certain percentage of the population, and this may embody the new idea and definition of what's considered conservative, that might be what the new right looks like, where you've got people who use the technology to facilitate coming together, whereas other segments of the society may find ways of, as an individual, pursuing their own interests using the technology. And I think the two doctrines are going to have to coexist with each other and express themselves in different ways. Otherwise, you're looking for the precursor to some serious conflict that the federal government is going to have to intervene in, because it still has to contend with the overall multipolar environment, multipolar world order, where most of this technology is going to be born as a byproduct of international competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, international competition. Yeah, if China starts doing it, if Russia starts doing it, then will the United States be forced into doing something like this on a mass scale?
And even if they don't, the real thing that is going to force the United States to do it is going to be the asymmetrical nature of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So imagine a rogue state or a smaller state that would have had no conversation in the past with regard to this, now being able to compete in that regard because they can leverage fourth industrial technology and transhumanism. There, again, are black markets that could form within these rogue states that disrupt the balance of all the major players on the field. That's how that gets adopted.
Okay. Well, Nameless, I have to wrap up and run, but thank you for coming up. And yeah, when you have time, yeah, let's throw something on the calendar to talk about, to bring the Mouse Utopia back, and anything else that's related to it.
Absolutely. I think I'll put my contact info in the back chat for you again. So just hit me up anytime you're comfortable, fam, and I'm down for it. If you've got any other constituents wanting to talk about that as well, I think this would be a good conversation so that people can kind of leverage anecdotally what they're experiencing in their own fields, because everybody's being affected by this at every level in some degree.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me up, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Okay. Chaos. See, I wasn't playing around, man. I got to wrap up, and I had Nameless up, and I'm not bringing a third party up. So you're still hanging out back there. Aquateki, thank you for the Cash App. I appreciate that. This is one of my official Aquateki thank yous.
Your side Decepticons is prime.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, that's Jazz from the Autobots from the Transformers cartoon, voiced by Scatman Crothers. That's Aquateki's avatar. So I play that for him every time he donates. Let's see. Tony says North Korea. Okay. Kareen says, I didn't know you were here. Great conversation as usual. Like and share, everyone. Thank you, Kareen. Aquateki says, took the words right out of my mouth, Tony. And then AB Media says, great stream, Doc. Thank you, AB. Still deciding if I'll post this on Facebook, because folks like to crash out there. All right. Quick advertisement, very, very quick. I think all of you know this, but for the people watching on the playback who are new, maybe some new people will be drawn in. I am a newly published author. This is my book, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story, Part 1, Innocent Basketball Dreams. It looks like just a basketball book, but it's actually a story. And one of the themes of this story is what we talked about here today. When you change the environment, when you change the culture from something that worked, it might not have been ideal in every aspect, but when you change it, you're going to get a very different result. Okay. Yeah, my high school coach established a culture. It worked for a little while, but the culture eventually got lost. That's a little sneak peek there. But when you change the culture, when you change what worked, and what worked may not have been ideal in every sense, but when you go so far away from that, you're going to get something very, very different. Okay. And you have to keep your eyes on the environment and keep your eyes on what's changing so you can adjust and maneuver with it. This is available on Amazon for $35. If you want to purchase a signed copy from me, I'll be selling it for $25 using one of these payment methods here. Make sure you send me your mailing address though. The paperback on Amazon is selling for $27. I'll be selling it for $22. Just reach out and contact me through my social media, through my email address here. Where is it? There it is. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. You can use that long email address there, BigDiscuss76 at Big Words Are Powerful. Someone took over that business Facebook site there, so that top line, don't go there. I don't know what's going on with that, and I think Facebook has threatened to take down 2 more of my business sites. I don't even really like Facebook anymore. I just keep it to reconnect with people and for marketing purposes, but I really don't even like Facebook anymore. I might write an essay about that. I had the idea this week to write an essay about it, why I don't like Facebook anymore. But Corrine says, got my copy, get yours. Thank you, Corrine. I appreciate that. And with that, everyone, I'm going to wrap this up. See, Corrine says Facebook is trash. I got rid of it back in 2018. Yeah. Tony says, yeah, Facebook is trash. Can we get a third? Can we get a third? Facebook is trash. Oh, Will I add 3R says, I despise Facebook as well. Wow. So the end of this stream has turned into an anti-Facebook party train. All right, everyone. Yeah. So on my main channel on Monday night, if any of you are interested, this is related to this. I've got Aaron Clary coming back, and we're going to talk about his book, A World Without Men, and analysis of an all-female economy. Very good book. It's a short read. He's probably going to clown me a little bit because he has a copy of my book. Yesterday on one of his live streams, he said he sent me a 400-page book. But his books are shorter, but they're powerful. This is a good read. So we're going to talk about this on Monday on my other channel at 7 o'clock. So if you're not doing anything, please come through. It will be lively and entertaining. I can promise you that. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will talk to you the next time. The next one will probably involve tariffs and farming. That's what I was going to talk about until I got this idea yesterday. Yeah, so with that, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll talk to you next time. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.